McCarty, president of Associated Industries, Missouri. And I've submitted written testimony, so I won't dwell on it since you probably already had the opportunity to read it. I do want to enter on into the record a couple of things. One is that I have a background having worked both in the Department of Revenue and working with the legislature on behalf of the tax collecting agency, and also working on behalf of taxpayers. And so I've been on both sides of this fence, and I've also had the opportunity to attend all of these hearings. And I thought it was very interesting. As you heard from taxpayers, I could relive a lot of those instances, having been on both sides of that bench. I have to tell you that I think it's very important for the senators. It's too bad that it is this late, but I think it's important for the senators to realize that this is not a partisan issue, and that your role as legislators is a very important one in turning back the Department of Revenue when they get a little too aggressive. And this has been the role over years of experience. And it happens both when the Democrats control the legislature in the governor's office, as well as when the Democrats control the legislature and there's a Republican in the governor's office. It doesn't matter who's in the governor's office. Frankly, it doesn't matter who controls the legislature. There's always a need for the legislature to rein in the tax collecting agency from time to time. And that's why you have as many specific exemptions on the books as you do. There has been a point in time, as you have found, that you have to pull in the Department of Revenue and say, we didn't mean that, we meant this. And that's why, as you saw, there have been times over history where the department has been more aggressive, and they've started moving down a path, and you've had to jerk them back as a legislature. I can remember times when I was at the Department of Revenue where we got a call under a Republican governor. It was a Republican-appointed bureaucracy where we got the phone call that said, go after garage sales. Make sure that garage sale owners have a sales tax license. That lasted about as long as it took for the very first garage sale to get an auditor to show up, and that was it. It was quickly recoiled. But that was a Republican-appointed director of revenue that gave that direction. So it's not limited to any particular party to make bad decisions. Those bad decisions are not too limited to any one party. But it is still the responsibility of the legislature to come back when those bad decisions are made and pull the Department of Revenue back into something that taxpayers can live with. And I believe that's what you've done by passing the bills that you passed this legislative session. It's unfortunate that the governor chose to veto those bills, particularly Senate Bill 584, 612, 662, 860, and 1296. All of those bills, House Bill 1296, those bills all provided clarity to the Department of Revenue that we've heard doesn't exist, that they need further clarity on these issues. You provided that to them. The governor vetoed those bills. Those bills are before you again tomorrow, and I would hope that the senators would take a look at those bills and your chance to provide clarity for the taxpayers of the state, because that is a role that only you can provide. I would also ask, you also provided some help in terms of procedure, in terms of burden of proof, shifting the burden of proof, and asking that the Department of Revenue notify taxpayers when things change. You heard a lot of talk today about letter rulings. Unless you go out to the Department of Revenue's website and type in exactly what you're looking for, you can't find that things have changed. And frankly, business owners that I represent don't have time to go out and search the Department of Revenue's website. They're busy running their business. It should be enough for them to pick up the phone, as you heard in some of your other hearings, and call the Department of Revenue with a simple question and get a simple answer. As you heard testimony in your other hearings, that's not the case. They can't get a simple answer. They either have to submit a formal letter ruling, which takes time they don't have, and wait several months for an answer that they will get eventually. But that's not something that is very easy for them to do, because they're busy trying to run their businesses, which we want them to do. So you provided several bills, Senate Bill 584, Senate Bill 829, and House Bill 1455. To help with procedural things on burden of proof, Senate Bill 612 and Senate Bill 662, that require the Department of Revenue to provide notice to taxpayers. We think that's a fairness issue. Why not? It could be as simple as them providing a web page that shows what tax changes have happened. They don't do that now. The one thing that they have started doing again lately is doing tax bulletins, and there was a tax bulletin out just at the beginning of July, which I thought was a very interesting one. With all the tax changes that have gone on lately, they did highlight Senate Bill 509, and I thought that was very interesting. You may recall before the override vote on Senate Bill 509, the governor's office had made a big deal about the fact that there would be no tax on incomes of $8,000 or more, that actually the rate would be zero on incomes of $8,000 or more. The Department of Revenue has issued a tax bulletin saying that once fully phased in, the top tax rate on individual income will be 5.5%. So thankfully that was not the case. There will not be a $4.8 billion hole in the budget as was claimed prior to the veto override vote on that bill. Back to the burden of proof changes. The burden of proof changes actually have their beginning in 2000 legislation, the legislation that was passed in the year 2000. That same year, we also had considered an idea that was adopted at the federal level to establish a Department of Revenue Oversight Board. That's something that the Associated Industries of Missouri would like to support again, and we will be bringing that forward, I think, as a legislative item in 2015. We would like for your support, Mr. Chairman, as we put the ornaments on that tree and see what could be included in that. Probably not the same legislation that we had filed back then, but it had bipartisan support. We had the Speaker of the House on the House side. We had Speaker of the House Jim Crider. The minority leader at the time was Mike Gibbons in the House. Those two co-sponsored the bill in the House. We had the Senate Ways and Means chairman here, the late Senator Harry Wiggins, and the minority leader in the House, Senator Frank Flotron, had filed that in the Senate. So the minority leader in the Senate, Senator Frank Flotron, had filed that in the Senate. So it was a bipartisan effort. That legislation needs some work. It doesn't do exactly what we would need it to do today, but it's modeled after the IRS Oversight Board that was established in 1998. And we think that it could provide some continuity, especially with term limits, and provide a place for taxpayers and legislature to have some continuity as time goes on to help bring the Department of Revenue hopefully, some way to deal with taxpayers in a fair manner. Something that may be lost as the Department of Revenue tries to collect every dollar that's owed is fairness. And we think if, dealing with my members, they want to collect the right amount of tax and remit it to the department. We think the department's efforts would be much better spent trying to collect tax from people that don't want to pay it. So that is it. That's really all I had to say, and I wanted to thank you for this committee's work. I think your work has been done very well. I think you did hear good testimony from a lot of taxpayers across the state. I think this exercise has been a good one, hearing from the Department of Revenue. But I also wanted to let you know one final thing. We keep talking about these Supreme Court decisions as if they just drop out of the sky. Those Supreme Court decisions don't get there by themselves. It requires a dispute between a taxpayer and the Department of Revenue, and often those don't come from refund claims. Often those come because the Department of Revenue decides to push the envelope a little bit with the taxpayer and go a little bit outside what has already been accepted as something that should be taxed. And that's where those Supreme Court decisions come from. So that was my final note, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, Mr. Chairman.